Hello guys, today we are at another episode of Econ's application. So for the past few videos, we will focus on the price mechanism application for essay, CSQ, and some of the concepts that are very frequently tested, like your demand supply curve and how do you interpret them. So today we shift gear to another very important micro topic, which is your market failure. So market failure is one of the most popular micro topics among students because market failure questions tend to be quite standard. So they can only test two things, which is first, explain the causes of market failure, and then the policies that address the market failure. However, sometimes the questions may tweak a little bit because they cannot be too standardized that everyone score a high mark. So here we are looking at an example of an essay that has this a little bit of tweak. So let's look at this question. Okay, so the preamble says, consumers are attracted to fast fashion for its low prices and regularly updated design, which often leads to frequent purchases. Okay, so we see that fast fashion is a very popular good and service. And they say many are unaware that this clothing contain toxic substances which may pose health risks through skin contact. Okay, so the question was about identifying the reasons for market failure. So for this question, there were actually two. The other one is about negative externality, which I didn't include because it was quite straightforward. But I wanted to talk about this second reason for market failure, which is a little different from what you learn usually and how you apply usually as well, which is when you look at the preamble, you see the word unaware, you will be reminded of this is about your consumer ignorance. Because, recap, consumer ignorance means that the consumer don't have full information about the action that they take or the good and service that they buy. And this is actually coming from two possible sides. So they can be ignorant about the benefits, which is a lot more common example you see in your notes and most of the market failure question. However, there is also this ignorance about the cost involved, which is a lot less tested. And in this question, we look at the second part, which is the ignorant about the cost, because now we need to look at how these toxic substances that the clothing has an impact on the consumer. Because now they are unaware that it is toxic. So toxic is a bad thing because it has health risks to the consumer. So it is considered as a cost. So in this case, this is the MPC. And for the benefit, it would be the MPB, marginal private benefit. In this case, it is a marginal private cost. Okay, so let's see how we can apply it on the graph. So we draw our we draw our graph. So we have our cost / benefit, and then we have our quantity. So again, very important, the y-axis, don't put it as price, because if you put as price, it is referring to the demand supply curve. So please be very aware of the axis. Okay, so in terms of the MPC perceived versus MPC actual, now we draw them on the graph. So we draw the MPB first. So the MPB is fine because there is assumed no ignorance about the benefit because the preamble didn't talk about it. And usually for market failure, you only look at one. So same for your externality. You only look at either positive or negative, And for consumer ignorance, you look at either MPB or MPC, because it will be very confusing to include both in the same graph. So they always assume the other perspective is constant. Okay, so now we draw the MPC. So this is your MPC perceived, because they are not aware of the full cost of buying the clothes. So maybe to the consumer, they only are aware of the cost in terms of the price they have to pay for the clothes, the effort they need to take to go to the clothes shop or to purchase online, for example. But there is this real cost that they are unaware of, which is your MPC actual, including the toxic substances. So here the outcome is that there is overconsumption, because they should consume at Q star, where they are fully aware of the total cost and the benefit, but they actually consume at Q prime. So here we see that this amount is overconsumption. And we learned that for market failure, there are two things that you have to apply on the graph. First, show the discrepancy between the allocative efficient quantity and the equilibrium, which is either over or under consumption. And the second one is to identify the dead weight loss area. So in this case, the dead weight loss is this shaded pink triangle, your dead weight loss, because between Q prime minus Q star, the marginal private cost is more than the marginal private benefit. So the consumers are actually less well off when they overconsume that quantity. So something that you can use to remember the dead weight loss area is also this way. So what you can do is that you imagine the dead weight loss area is an arrowhead, because it's always a triangle pointing left or right. So you imagine it's a triangle, and the arrowhead is always pointing at the socially optimal output. So in this case, we see that it is an arrowhead pointing to the left and touching Q star. So this is a way you can double check whether you have identified the dead weight loss area correctly. Yeah. So for market failure, usually we will be able to answer the causes type of question because they are quite straightforward, but sometimes they have little bit tweaks like that, or maybe the good and service or activity that they mention are not very heard of, so you may need to take some time to explain why there is, for example, externality, or why is there imperfect info. But in this case, the preamble very obviously tells you what is the aspect that the consumer is ignorant of. So you can just quote it and then link to the concept of consumer ignorance in terms of underestimating the cost to them. Then you draw the graph accordingly. Remember to talk about the difference in the quantity and the dead weight loss. Then you will be able to score your point. Yep. Okay, so this is all for today's session. For the next video, we will talk about a policy question, evaluation question, to see how you can apply it for market failure. Okay, see you at the next video. Bye bye.